Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is accusing a national broadcaster of unfair news coverage as part of an effort to help the Liberals. Now, we've heard that before about the CBC, but this time it's CTV. CTV has apologized for taking Poilievre out of context. Now, this happened in a report in which comments that Poilievre made were edited together to create a sentence he did not say, and the out-of-context comments suggested the non-confidence motion that Poilievre tabled in Parliament was all about dental care as opposed to a long list of issues the Conservative pose, including the carbon tax. Now, normally, when a media agency makes a mistake and apologizes, that's the end of it, but not this time. The Conservatives went on social media to accuse CTV News of lying for Trudeau. Poilievre went further to suggest it was a bit of a quid pro quo, that Trudeau protects the company being Bell, against real and complete competition to gain favorable coverage on CTV. And then he derided the state of the company's bonds have been downgraded to one level above junk. Not content to let it just play out on social media, Poilievre brought the allegation to the floor of the House of Commons today.
I know that the media has worked hard to try and avoid me saying the words carbon tax, as we saw in the extremely dishonest and fraudulent report from Bell Media-controlled CTV, who's a company that is whose bonds have been downgraded to near junk status as its overpaid CEO empties the books to pay his wealthy friends an unacceptably and unrealistically high dividend.
Okay, that's the next topic we're going to discuss here on the Power Panel with Michelle Cadario, Françoise Boivin, Kate Harrison, and Emily Nicola. Emily, look, CTV made a mistake. CTV apologized for the mistake. That happens in our business. You know, that's normal. The insinuation that the corporate entity that owns CTV is somehow driving this is an interesting development. And there's another development today. The Conservatives have released a copy of a memo that was sent to the caucus announcing a full boycott of CTV, saying that until CTV issues a formal and unequivocal apology, one that explicitly acknowledges the malicious nature of their editing and not merely dismisses this as a mistake or error, we will not engage with them. So effective immediately, no engagement with CTV News, including interviews, providing statements, or any form of commentary to CTV News and its reporters, and this extends to any meetings with Bell executives, staff, or lobbyists. This is a big move. What do you make of this, including the attack on the corporate side of things, which employs 45,000 people?
Yeah, it is a big move. Bell is so many things in Canada. It's one of those emblematic companies that's really, really hard to avoid. And so what's happening here today is very symbolic. There's the issue of the relationship between a Conservative leader and media, and how essentially there's an assumption of bad faith there, and an irritation and a refusal to come on air for several networks that has been in place, not just for him personally, but also some members of his team, of his caucus. So that's one thing. Now there's also the assumption of intent on the part of what happened internally at Bell, which is, I'm going to say it, verging on conspiracy theory, because you don't know at this point what happened. You're just making the assumption that this is what happened, and in a language that will be making a nod to people who do believe in some aspects of, you know, corporation talking to, in a way that is disconnected from the reality of how a newsroom function. And so that to me is really dangerous, because it plays into a narrative of how basically it attacks the independence of newsroom from their owners in a way that contributes to the public distrust in media in a way that's very grave. And the last thing I will say is that he is doing it partly because Bell is so many things, and part of those things, and he mentioned it in a tweet, it's a company that a lot of people are having to wait on the phone to get access to service when they're, trying to get access. There's something wrong with their phone and with the internet, which has nothing to do with CTV and CTV News. And so he's using the fact that Bell is disliked by some of its clients to then put attacking Bell as something that's politically feasible. And there's so many things entwined in there, and it's a very Canadian story, because I wouldn't say only in Canada, but it's very Canadian to have a company that takes so much place in our life, so that it makes this moment so symbolically charged.
Kate, he stood up on the floor of the House of Commons and said that about a company that big pension funds are invested in, 45,000 people work for them. They've admitted the mistake. It was they said basically human error and incompetence, or that happens in this business, right? I'm not saying CTV News is incompetent, but we all make mistakes in this business and we apologize for it. And they published it, and their chief anchor said it on the show. But to demand that they apologize for the malicious nature of the editing, to admit to a malicious intent here, that's a demand that's difficult for a news agency to accept.
I'm not sure that we should wave it away as just a mistake, because this is not a misattribution. It's not even taking part of the same sentence and applying it in a different context. Yep. This is taking a full paragraph, a variety of sentences that Pierre Poilievre said, taking bits and pieces from each sentence to craft a new sentence. Yeah. That is journalistic malpractice. Okay, so just, and I'm not defending this, I'm explaining this. The sentence that Pierre Poilievre said is, that's why it's time to put forward a motion for a carbon tax election. For whatever reason, they spliced together different things he said in that scrum to create the sentence, that's why we need to put forward a motion. Now, it's not like it was changed to him saying something outrageous. It's not a sentence he uttered. It does not say it's about a carbon tax election, and in the way it was presented in the story, it makes it sound like he wants an election to stop dental care. Correct. So I get why they feel they were taken out of context, and CTV admitted to that and apologized for it. But the suggestion from Mr. Poilievre's tweets that the Bell Canada corporate suite is somehow weaponizing its news agencies to get favorable treatment by the Trudeau government is a lot to say. I don't think that they're feeling that they've been taken out of context. Mm-hmm. They were taken out of context. Absolutely. And I agree. When you are the Fifth Estate, you are in the accountability game, just the same as politicians are. And a quick apology the same day for something that is so egregious that action to be taken is not going to be enough when we're talking about the table stakes of not favorable coverage, fair and balanced coverage. And that's all Conservatives are asking for. They're asking for fair coverage. They're not asking for glowing reviews. They just want the facts to be reported as they are. So I don't think that it is, delving into conspiracy theory. We had 3 separate sentences. A Frankenstein sentence emerged as a result. That deserves to be called out, and I think that should be called out regardless of who says it in the House of Commons or which journalistic entity makes such a bad decision. But Françoise, I don't know what happened in the edit suite of CTV. I know a lot of people who work at CTV. I respect them. They're good people. They're good journalists. This is a mistake. They owned it and admitted to it. The boycott, look, that's something, full disclosure, you're all aware, we've been dealing with this on this show. The Conservative hasn't sat down with me for an interview since March of 2023. Same sort of stuff. But what going after Bell and the corporate interests and suggesting they're doing this to help the Liberals because they need help to deal with their stock price, that seems new. You know what saddens me is that in Canada, and I strongly believe in that, good faith is always presumed. Legally, you have to presume that somebody might make a mistake out of good faith until you can prove the reverse. So basically, I don't think the Conservative, they can't think, they can't feel, but sorry, in law, feeling, thinking is not the proof. If Bell had said, we're not, and CTV had said, we are not correcting this, we stand by what then you can have some legal back and forth. And right now, I would take it face value and make sure that they don't repeat the thing. I would like to go back to what Pierre Poilievre did on the 20th of September against BC. He's accusing them of being of bad faith. He can think whatever he wants of any companies in Canada. But when you have a big employer like this one, and you're rejoicing, not just saying and denouncing certain practice of paying your employees or something like that, but you're rejoicing that their stock has been downgraded by Moody, I'm thinking, Bud, you're lacking complete understanding of all the people who work in that huge enterprise. So when they come 3 days later and are a bit insulted because they don't like how a program, if I gave you the list of all the time I've been badly quoted while I was in politics, or that I felt when I was a Liberal that everybody was conservative on every station, I mean, that's politics. That's
that's kind of the fun back and forth. Unless they replay exactly what you say according my gospel, according to me, it won't happen. They will always criticize or just try to get you to the end of it. So I find this all totally disgusting. And it's like, turn the page. You're not making yourself more likable by doing this. And boycotting is never a solution when you are aiming at a position of leadership. You have to find ways to get these people to understand or act differently. You have to, but no, he gives the order to his minions. Please don't go. Not please. You do not go. I mean, wow, for democracy, I'm really in shock.
Yeah, Michelle, look, the Conservatives were well within the right to ask for a correction and a retraction. And they got it, and they got the apology, and no one is disagreeing with that. It's this follow-up on the corporate side that strikes me as interesting, and now the boycott club has expanded. What are your thoughts on it all?
Well, my first thought, first of all, he is right to ask for an apology. How that happened and how that's just not correct. It shouldn't happen. And to demand a bit of an explanation as to why, I think is absolutely fair game. And to perhaps talk about and have some demands in terms of how and where the apology is redone and how it's broadcast and how it's distributed, fair ball. But then to go into some creepy way that there's some big, broad conspiracy, it's not just here again. Like, who does it remind you of? But again, Donald Trump. Like, what does he say about CNN? What does he say about MSNBC? They're all part of this whole, left-wing conspiracy to who knows what. So, like, it's a very bizarre way to take it. What I wonder, though, is if they're now setting up for, doing a bit of a campaign a la Doug Ford. Not having a media travel with them. No debates. Kind of taking it to their own airways, using their own satellite, having the excuse that they've been looking for to not actually go with mainstream media at all. So it's interesting if this is just kind of a step forward. They've taken it too far. It does not put him in good light, I don't think at all. But I wonder if they now have a different objective beyond this, and where they were right in terms of asking for the apology. Yep. But now where are they going with it?
Yeah, and look, they say in the letter, Emily, it is a deliberate attempt to manipulate the public's understanding of our common sense message with the goal of undermining our position. And until CTV issues a formal and unequivocal apology that explicitly acknowledges the malicious nature of their editing, that's the standard. Malice in libel cases in journalism is the death sentence for a news organization. I don't know how any news agency could agree to that, and I'm not sure the facts as we know them bear that out. But it's again an assault on anybody who's critical of them, their motives, their intentions, and their character. Right?
It's going to make it very hard for CTV to respond, for sure. Mm-hmm. It might just be, spur of a moment rhetoric, and there's a way somebody's going to blink. But to go back to clarify my earlier comment about the word conspiracy theory, it's not about what happened in the newsroom. It's about making connection between the CEO of Bell and the Prime Minister and saying that there's some sort of collusion there that led to what we've seen in the newsroom. Yes. That is vocabulary that is close to the semantic environment of people who believe in, for example, World Economic Forum conspiracy theories. That's what I think is dangerous there. It's that association. That being said, I do think that it's going to be very tricky at some point in election mode to be enforcing all of those boycotts. What about debates? What about the French media? That's the thing that's been really interesting, and I will point out, it's been very hard for you to have Pierre Poilievre on. He's going on Radio-Canada still because he doesn't take Quebec vote for granted. And so if at this point in this country we're having conversations with the official leader of the opposition in French only with Canadian interviews, it's going to make for a very, very awkward media and political situation to be in. But at this point, that's basically where we are it's interviews in French because he's in seduction mode over there, and boycotts in English. And at some point, there's going to be some need to have a conversation about that as well.
Yeah, look, we have persisted through this. We keep inviting them on. I text with MPs, people in his caucus who want to come on, but they're not allowed to come on. They say they will, and then when they have to ask permission, it never actually happens. So we have duly elected members of the House of Commons who are not allowed to come on the national public broadcaster for reasons because the leader's office has decided I'm not a fair journalist. So here we are. But the issue, Kate, that I think is interesting here is they can do what they want with the media. That's a choice they make. When you make allegations like this about a publicly traded company on the floor of the House of Commons, like, should you be doing that? Like, this is what I wonder about. There are people with their pensions, mutual funds, their livelihood invested in Bell. I know it's gone through some struggles and laid people off, but is that what we're going to do to corporate Canada?
I'd point out that a lot of that disdain is directed very much at the CEO and the executive team, and not at the boots on the ground that are laying cable. I think there is an important distinction there. This would be a lot less complicated if telecommunications companies were kind of out of the journalism business. It would be a lot less complicated if these companies weren't receiving either preferential regulatory treatment or, in some cases, direct subsidies. Because when a private company takes advantage of those things from the government, they are now in a new level of accountability. They open themselves up to criticism and vulnerability from opposition attacks in terms of trying to make a connection between what they're doing, their business practices, and the government. And we have created this news ecosystem in Canada that is very, very reliant on government funding. So I don't fault Poilievre for making that connection between these companies taking advantage of this and a news ecosystem that has some questions to answer.
Right.
They have to find their own self-sufficiency.
Post Media gets a massive amount of the subsidy money too, and they never criticize Post Media's ethics because of the editorial leaning there. But like a mistake,
I wouldn't say that's off the table, David. And I think that
probably not.
This is actually a very good example of how there's no sacred cows.
Right. But a mistake made in an editing suite in Toronto, to draw that to what decisions are made in the corporate suite in Toronto, it is connecting things that do not appear to be in evidence.
What I observed from that statement and Poilievre's comments in the House today is he is making this about kind of your treatment of tax dollars. Should Canadians expect that when Bell is given money or preferential regulatory treatment, that this is the kind of coverage that they're going to get in return? I think that's a fair question for Canadians to contemplate.
Look, we're out of time. We will talk more about this on the show tomorrow, I'm hoping. And if a Conservative MP or member of the staff wants to come on, the invitation is there. Anytime you want to take the opportunity, you are welcome. I want to thank the Power Panel for taking the opportunity today. Michelle Cadario, Françoise Boivin, Kate Harrison, and Emily Nicola. Thanks so much. It's always good to have you here. And Emily, great to see you in person.